Hey everybody, Sanava here, and today we're going to do a quick update on the Shadowblight Minion support Necromancer that I've been working on. I'm currently 91 on hardcore, and out of all my sigils that I currently have, I have a few 49s, so I've chosen this 49 to run as a test. Basically, we got the blood blisters, extra fizz damage is burning over 5 seconds, and then chance to disable potions. So a little risky for hardcore, but we'll see how it goes.
I'm not ready yet. I'm low on essence.
Typically, with the scaling of Nightmare Dungeons, your damage isn't necessarily going to be so much the problem. It's going to be your survivability. And I've done a video on this the other day, especially on hardcore. You have to be really cognizant of like what you can do to stay alive. And as always, Necro is not the quickest class at clearing, so just keep that in mind as we make our way through here.
I'm not ready yet.
It's one of those blood blisters.
I need more time. I need more time.
Always love Conduit.
I need more time.
Looks like our last mob is over here. Let's go hunt them down.
I'm not ready yet.
And we've got like our first real elite. That is crazy, the fact that they just kind of teleport around like that.
I'm not ready yet.
Super annoying. So one of the really fun things about minion builds is the whole suppressor mechanic really makes it difficult to scale your damage.
I'm not ready yet.
And then when they teleport like they're doing right now, even if you get into a good spot where your minions are, reliably
I need more time.
in the bubble, these guys just kind of hop around and then negate all that.
I need more time.
They're definitely the worst, probably the worst like affix you can see on an elite playing minion builds is going to be suppressor.
I need more time. I'm not ready yet.
Okay. Alright, we've got our first real healthy pack of elites over here.
I need more time. I'm out of essence. need more time.
We gotta find the other two high priests.
I'm not ready yet. I need more time. I need more time.
Popped my immune there simply because that blister was going off and my minions were doing their own thing. So one of the other issues with playing a minion build is not only do they have issues with stuff like the suppressor mod on elites, you can't like target command them. So if they get it in their head to start doing like their own thing, you could be attacking something and they're attacking something else. Now there are ways to kind of play with the AI where you can move far away from where they are and they will always follow you by default. So if they're attacking something you don't want them to attack, you can make them chase you essentially and then try to reset their aggro on something else. But it's always kind of sketchy when that's happening. It's never like a guarantee that they're actually going to attack the thing that you're attacking. Like right now I really would like them to be on this elite, but they're kind of just doing whatever they want, attacking the random stragglers.
I'm not ready yet.
Alright, and we just gotta find the last priest here.
I need more time.
You can see by using our curse, we ensure that our blood mist is readily available, which is really nice. Keeps it relatively off CD.
I need more time.
We are running into a situation where our minions are dying now, which isn't great. They particularly don't do well against the mortar mod, I should say.
I'm not ready yet.
And even when you're trying to keep the rolling heal on them, they are experiencing survivability issues.
I need more time.
So as you start to get higher with the tiers above your current player level, part of the minion playstyle is just going to be simply you're going to have to resummon them. Not like constantly, but frequently. And we'll see if Blizz decides to make minions more resilient.
I need more time. I'm not.
Alright, and here's the last priest. To kill other followers, essentially.
I need more time.
And that's the
I
dungeon.
need more time.
So as you can see, level 91, doing a tier 49. The mobs are roughly 12 levels above me. And not too bad. So I'm just gonna show you guys real quick my current setup. and some slight changes I've made since the build video. Still experimenting with different things as I continue to level. Around the mid 80s, leveling has become very grindy. So I was doing several levels a day, but now it's maybe 2 levels a day because I have, obviously other things I have to do during the day. So yeah, it definitely becomes more of a grind for XP, especially now that I'm in the 90s. But and the reason why that's important is we can start with the Paragon. So I've unlocked my 4th board, and I will be putting my final glyph in here. That's going to give the build even more power. But as you can see, like, the damage is quite good on, a tier that's a lot higher than my character level. But what we're currently doing is on the starter board, we're using control. So we had the mage glyph here. I've swapped that out with control to scale more damage. So the minions don't really do a ton of damage. They do decent damage, but I think the best synergy is to continue to scale your personal damage and then scale their damage in line with what you're doing. So you can see with the control glyph, we get 138% increased damage to crowd controlled enemies. Enemies are always crowd controlled because we're, using Decrepify, and we have our golem stunning them. And then the bonus that's unlocked here is minions and myself deal 10% increased damage if they're slowed. They're always slowed because of Decrepify. And then when they're stunned or frozen, particularly stunned with this build, it's 20%. So that's what we're doing for the starter board. For the second board, we're still running with the Cult Leader board, and we're still using Dead Razor to buff the minion nodes in the radius here, so nothing's changed on this board. On the Wither board, we are using Darkness here, and that just gives us a flat 97% increased shadow damage, and then the bonus is whenever myself or minions deal shadow damage to an enemy, that enemy deals 2% reduced damage up to 10%. So just that nice damage reduction. I have swapped out the Cold Mages for Shadow Mages. I noticed that the cold mages weren't freezing things constantly. It wasn't like a reliable freeze, because especially since I'm not using the aspect that causes them to do blizzard on this build. So I just found that Shadow Mages seems to be more synergy with what I'm doing. And then the final glyph that we'll use on the 4th board is going to be Undaunted. This just makes it that we do more damage while we have Fortified. We're always fortified playing this build, and then when we unlock the bonus, we'll get an additional 10% damage reduction for the more fortified that we have. And we will pick up, this final board is Scent of Death. We will pick up the Scent of Death just for an additional 15% damage reduction. And for the other boards, we also got the legendary aspects. So for Cult Leader, we picked up Cult Leader for the 45% increase to all of our minions, and then we picked up Wither on the Wither board. So that's the Paragon. Basically changed the glyph in the starter board, and the last 9 levels are going to give me the Paragon I need to, get the glyph in this board and scale it and pick up Scent of Death and just kind of finalize Paragon. So even more defense and even more damage still to come in the build. And then for the skill tree, I made some slight tweaks here. We are still not using a generator. We have good enough essence gen without it, so we just got to put 2 points there. Still using Blight. We went all out on Hued Flesh just to have the additional corpses. This is really good synergy with Corpse Explosion. We still pick up Blood Mist because we're playing hardcore for the immune. We have Grim Harvest for the essence gen. Corpse Explosion is obviously our clear, and we're scaling this with a mod or an affix on gear, so we get 9 levels currently with that. Then we have the nodes for our warriors and mages for life and damage. We're getting Decrepify for the slow and this chance to stun, and then for the CD reduction. So if you go back and look at me clearing that dungeon, you'll notice that I was spamming my golem ability like every 2 or 3 seconds, because when you Decrepify a huge pack of mobs and all your minions are hitting them, it makes your blood mist go from like a 20-something plus CD down to like 2 seconds or 3 seconds, and it makes your golem, stun and vuln ability off. That goes from being like a 10-second CD to basically being off CD every 2 seconds or so. So you can just continuously spam stun and vuln mobs, which is just great for controlling things and extra damage. Down here, we still have Necrotic Carapace. This is how we stay fortified. For the Shadow Wheel, I dropped Crippling Darkness. It doesn't seem like this lucky hit procs a lot, and our Golem already stuns so often because he's always off CD because of Decrepify. So I took the points out of this, and we have extra Gloom, so extra shadow damage for my minions and myself because of our amulet. I don't know, preferably what passive I would really want there. I think I would prefer Terror over Gloom, but that's currently what we have. And then down here, we're still getting life and damage for the Golem. We're picking up the Skeletal Priest heal and the ability so our minions can't be one-shot. And then we're getting the extra attack speed for minions and myself. And then, obviously, Shadowblight, because this is a Shadowblight build. So that's Paragon and skills. For the gear, we've made some slight changes. In the helm socket, I'm now using Exploiters. This just gives us increased crowd control duration, which is really good for this build. And then when enemies become unstoppable so they can't be CC'd, we just do a flat 50% increased damage to them. So I find that you could still use Heart and Bones on the helm here for the damage reduction to minions. I might go back to that, but outside of fire mods on elites, the minions are actually pretty tanky. I don't know what's going on with minions and fire damage in particular, but they suffer heavily if like mortar is on an elite or a fire mod is on an elite. But usually with other affixes on elites, they're a lot more resilient. I don't know why that is. There's no data on how minions actually work numerically, so that's just an observation. For the chest, we have the blight aspects. That's what we're using to gather things up. Extremely useful. We're still using Howl from Below on our gloves. That gives us just the ability to let the corpses on the ground become minions that summon and charge things and then blow up on them. It's great. We're using Disobedience for that flat 50% increase to our armor. This makes our armor stack like up to 10k, which at current level is basically the cap on physical damage reduction. Armor loses extreme value once you go like 17 plus levels above your character level. So that Nightmare tier dungeon was, the mobs were 103, so they were 12 levels above us. We could go up to 108 on mob levels, and after that, as we would push Nightmare tiers, armor drastically loses value. It becomes like negligible and does nothing for your defense. There's actually very few ways to like stack defense on high tiers, which I kind of go over once again in my prior video, like from a hardcore perspective. But if I was to try and do like an 80 Nightmare tier dungeon at 100, the mobs are going to be so far above my level that all my defensive stats will have no value. I will become a one-shot glass cannon. Every character will become a one-shot glass cannon, unless you're playing a particular class like maybe Barb, where you can be unstoppable a lot. But outside of that, like the game currently does not offer you a scaling ability for your defenses that scales in line with Nightmare dungeons. So in hardcore at 100, I think I will be comfortable with doing 55 to 60 Nightmare tier dungeons. As you just saw, I did a 49. It was relatively safe. But once you start going above that, your defenses just plummet. So having the flat armor is great now. I don't know how much value this aspect will hold once you start pushing really high Nightmare tier dungeons, because armor doesn't really mean anything at that point. It loses its value completely. For the boots, we're using the +2 to Skelly Warriors. This just helps with corpse gen. We're using our blighted aspect on our weapon. I still need to get a 120% one. And for our amulet, we're using the +3 to Skelly Mages just to get some more minions out. I don't really know, once again, how much effective damage they're doing, so I might eventually change my amulet aspect to maybe be more in line with my Shadowblight, maybe move Decay up to my amulet and just put the + Skelly Mages on another piece of gear, because I think I'm doing primarily all the damage and the minions are more of a support function. So we'll see. And then I would like to get the Ring of Medeln to test things out. I would place that in this slot here, but for right now we're just using the Frenzy Dead aspect. This just makes our minions have more attack speed, which helps with you know, corpse generation and things like that. And then on the shield we're using the Protector. This is great for hardcore. It's like a flat 5,000 barrier that gets put on me every 30 seconds. Now I did pick up Temerity. It wasn't the greatest rolled, and I was testing with these boots, these legs here. So it gives me a better barrier actually than what I currently get from the Protector aspect on the shield. But the problem with Temerity is I'm trying to find the right synergy. So I tried using these pants and then using the aspect on my helm to create blood orbs every time I consume a corpse. Have like up to a 30% chance to do that. To see if I could constantly roll a barrier on my character, which would be extremely effective. So I think the play is eventually to use Temerity with an aspect like that and get rid of the exploiters potentially, because having just a barrier that's on your character more reliably is really nice instead of every 30 seconds. The problem is with the pants right now, I am scaling Corpse Explosion on these, and I get 4 extra potions. So having like 13 potions right now versus 9 is really nice, especially on hardcore. And then unlike these pants, I get like the flat armor on these and the Corpse Explosion levels. So there are trade-offs to using Temerity. I'm not quite sure if I will actually use this or not, but I'm still testing and playing around with it. For stats on my actual gear, I'm still mostly going for defensive stats with the exception of my weapon, amulet, and rings. So on the weapon, you want to get vuln damage because that's a multiplier, and then, you know, intelligence, and then things like damage to close enemies, damage to slow enemies, things like that. I would probably get rid of that lucky hit mod, but I wanted to roll vuln damage on this wand. If I get another 820 wand that has good stats, I would change this weapon up. And then on my rings, you can see I'm going for vuln damage, shadow dot damage, damage to stun. Those are all great mods. I am rolling life on my rings because it's hardcore, so I really want to stack my life. So, and on this one, similar damage to slowed, vuln damage, max life. Amulet currently have move speed, so Necros don't have really any movement ability. They don't have anything. So I am putting movement speed on my amulet and boots to try to make my character quicker. So we have the movement speed on the amulet, plus a flat armor roll, and then we have the damage reduction from close enemies. So very defensive amulet at the moment. And then on the boots, we're doing things like fortify generation, movement speed, dodge chance, and movement speed after killing an elites. And then we have the plus max evade charges so that we can actually evade several times. So the multiple evade charges and all the movement speed does kind of make you feel a little bit quicker as a Necro. That's pretty nice. And then on the rest of the gear, it's pretty much looking for armor, life, intelligence, and then damage reduction. So you can see on my helm, we have armor, life, intelligence, cooldown reduction. The chest is armor, life, intelligence, stats, right? So it's very just like kind of trying to make yourself as beefy as possible, because the damage really does come largely from the Paragon board. If this wasn't a dot build, I'd be looking for like crit mods, like on the gloves and on the rings and whatnot, but we're playing dot, so crit really doesn't have value there. So mostly defensive stats on all the other pieces of gear. So yeah, that's a quick update on the build. I think it's doing pretty well. Eventually, hopefully I'll get to 100. It's a lot slower now that I'm in the 90s, but the plan is to, you know, get to 100 and see how high I can push the Nightmare tier dungeons and see what I can do with this build. But so far, using Blight as my primary ability, it seems really fun and effective. And yeah, the minions are actually working out pretty great. So we'll see how far this goes in the coming week or so. And I'll have another update video for you guys then. Take it easy, and as always, stay safe in Sanctuary.